1 year with the Sony A7IV. Actually, I think it's been more like 13 months. Today I want to talk about the good and the bad and the ugly. Do I regret buying this? What are the things I love about it? What are the things I hate about it? What are the things that are mild annoyances? And should I have bought a different camera? Let's get into it. So firstly, what are my use cases? What do I actually use this for? I have another YouTube channel that's based entirely around music production. I've been doing that for a long time. Every single video for the past year has been filmed entirely on this Sony A7IV. There's vlog stuff on there, there's talking head stuff like this, there's lots and lots of B-roll, especially product B-roll. I'm also a pretty avid photographer. Lots and lots of product photography. I also love doing landscape photography, and I have used this just about every day for the past year. So I have lots and lots of time on this camera, and I definitely have some thoughts on it. Let's talk about the things that I like the most first. Now, for those of you that are interested, I'm actually shooting this right now on the Sony A6400 with a Sigma 16mm lens. This definitely has superior video quality, but I want to be able to show you guys some stuff while I'm filming. So I went back to the old camera. Side note, let me know if you want a comparison between the APS-C Sonys and the latest one of the latest full frames. I have made some notes, so I'm gonna read these notes in an effort to fly through this. Here are the things that I like about this camera. The video quality is 10-bit 422, which means you can use S-Log3 and have no issues color grading it. Absolutely love that. The autofocus is phenomenal in video and in photo. It almost never loses focus. The LCD flip screen. This was one of the earliest Sonys with the flip screen. I think the Sony A7S3 was the first one, and couldn't use it without it. A flip screen is 100% necessary for me. The electronic image stabilization on top of IBIS is really great. This is not the only Sony camera to have this, but it is fantastic. The mode switch right on top here, so that way you can very easily switch between photo, video, and S&Q is outstanding. The fact that there are 3 separate memory locations, and those are 3 memory locations for each mode. So you get 3 photo presets, 3 video presets, and 3 S&Q presets. So good and so usable. Now, side note, you actually can have 4 memory presets, because even though there's actually only 3 memory presets, you also have a manual here, and that manual will remember whatever you set it to. So you can set it to a particular bunch of settings in manual, switch over to memory mode 2 or 3, and when you go back to manual, it will go back to whatever it was set on in manual. My favorite thing about this is perfect for me, and how I have this set up is memory location. Let's talk about video first. Memory location 1 for me is set to this talking head shot. When I'm doing these talking head shots, it's all set up and dialed in for exactly this shot. Memory location 2 is 4K 60 with the active stabilization turned on in S-Log3. Memory location 3 is 120 frames per second, and I keep the manual set up with my vlogging setup. So manual for me is auto white balance 4K 24p with the active stabilization on, because when I'm vlogging, when I'm actually vlogging, I don't want to think about the camera at all. But that's really awesome that I actually have 4 usable presets basically on this camera. So usable. The other thing that I love about this camera is the dynamic range. You can go watch Gerald Undone's video on this, his original video, where he goes over the dynamic range. The dynamic range of this is fantastic and really just gives a much higher quality look. Now, I will say, if you want to see video footage from this camera, you can go check out any other video on this channel. Don't forget to subscribe while you're doing that. Or you can go to my music channel, I'll link it down below, and you can check out any video in the past year, all the B-roll, all the vlogging stuff, everything was done on this camera. While you're down, links in description, I'll put a link to this, as well as all of my favorite lenses and a whole bunch of stuff that I use on a daily basis. Links down below. If you use those links, it costs you nothing extra and helps me out a little bit, and I really appreciate it. One of my next favorite things is 4K 60 at this price point, but more on that, because that's the most controversial part of this camera. We're gonna get to that in a minute. minute. It's small form factor compared to other full frame cameras. I think Canon, Nikon, like they all do such a great job these days, but I do like how small this is compared to like a Canon R6 or something. One of my next favorite things about this camera is the unofficial second native ISO. So at ISO 3200, this camera cleans back up again. It's not quite as clean as the native ISO of 800 if you're in S-Log, but it does significantly clean back up, and this is a really usable spot for me. The Sony A7IV, I think the second native ISO is like 12,800, and that would be too bright for me. I never need to go that high ever. So this is the perfect like sweet spot for the second native ISO. Perfect. The 33 megapixel, the 33 megapixel good lord. The 33 megapixel sensor in this, in my opinion, is kind of a great sweet spot. It is high enough resolution to have really high quality photos, but it's not such a big sensor. It's not so many megapixels that the file size is enormous. I find this like 30 to 35 megapixel, the sweet spot of sensor size, which also means that the 4K image coming out of this is downsampled from 7K. This is one of the sharpest images, the highest resolution 4K images you get from any Sony cameras available right now. Last but not least of the likes before we get on to the dislikes, full-size HDMI port. Why all modern cameras don't have full-size HDMI port at this point is beyond me. This is a must for every modern camera, and this one has it. Let's get to my dislikes on the Sony A7 IV. For photos in uncompressed RAW, it's only 6 frames per second. It's a little slow. There was one particular time we were in Monument Valley in Arizona. The sun was setting behind the Three Sisters in Monument Valley, and we were on a Jeep tour. We were in the back of a Jeep, open air Jeep tour, and they weren't gonna stop. And I really wanted to capture the sun setting right behind the middle of the Three Sisters. So as we're driving, I'm like, I think I can get this. And I flip the camera into high drive mode, which is only 6 frames per second. And as we're driving past, I had no idea when the shot was actually gonna be correct because I didn't have any time to set up the shot. We're going 15 miles an hour the whole time. So I throw the camera into high drive mode and I just hold the button down the whole way past. And I was like, if I just hold it down the whole way past it, hopefully I'll get the shot that I'm looking for. Here's the shot that I got right here, and I'm pretty happy with this. However, I think I would have really liked it to have like 10 frames per second. I could have been a little bit more precise. I think if you're shooting sports or any sort of action type stuff, 6 frames per second for uncompressed RAW, it's a little slow. Now, granted, it does go faster than that for compressed RAW and JPEG, but I shoot everything in uncompressed RAW. So that's my first negative. My second negative, and this is a big one for me, is that the 120 frames per second, which is only at 1080, not 4K, it is only 8-bit if you want audio. That's unfortunate to me. And here's why it's unfortunate. Because in S&Q mode, you can do 1080, 120p without audio at 10-bit. So the fact that if you want audio with your 120, they cripple you down to 8-bit, that's annoying to me because the camera's clearly capable of shooting 120 in 10-bit. That's real annoying. Here's the next real annoying part to me. Actually, this might be the most annoying part. I do a lot of time-lapse stuff. I do a lot of like 24 times QuickTime with the S&Q. If you want a 4K 24 speed at 1 frame per second, you have to use V90 memory cards, the expensive high-speed memory cards. Stupid. Why would you have to do that? Like, that's obviously significantly less data than shooting 4K at 24 frames per second, and you don't need a high-speed card for that. Why do you need the high-speed, expensive cards to do time-lapse in the exact same resolution? Stupid. The next thing that is a drawback to me is the rolling shutter. Now, Gerald Undone, again, did great tests on this. Go check out his video. I'll link it down below. The rolling shutter is not great. Now, it doesn't matter for shots like this, and I find with the electronic stabilization on, like when I'm vlogging, it's fine. But there are times when you're like whip panning or when you're like doing like quick movements when you're vlogging, you can see the rolling shutter for sure. I wish the rolling shutter was better, but I also understand that you know, this is not that expensive of a camera in the grand scheme of things. The next thing that annoys me, and I deal with this constantly, is that this sensor right here, and this is the sensor that turns the screen off when you put this up to your face. It turns the viewfinder on and turns the screen off when something gets close to this sensor. What annoys me about this is every time I go to reach for the menu button or any of these buttons here, it turns the screen off for just a second because it thinks I'm bringing it up to my face. Like, that's a dumb location for this. That sensor should be moved to the top up here, so that way it only gets triggered when you actually go to bring the camera up to your face. I really think that that needs to be moved. And that brings us to maybe the most controversial part of this camera is the crop in 4K 60. This camera does do 4K 60, but it is in an APS-C crop. Now this is, when I was purchasing this was one of the biggest hesitances that I had about purchasing this camera. I should say that I've had zero overheating issues with this ever. I've used this nearly every day for a year and it's never once overheated. I've never gotten an overheating warning, no issue there. So the 4K 60 in the APS-C crop is still downsampled from 4.8K, I think. The image is still great. The con, of course, is that it's not full frame. We would like full frame 4K 60. Now here is maybe my somewhat uncommon take for the work that I actually do. When I'm doing 4K 60, first I've almost abandoned 120 altogether. 120 is almost too slow for most of the stuff that I do. I actually like 60 frames per second more than I like 120 for just about everything. But when I am shooting in 4K 60, it's usually product B-roll, or it's usually closer, more detail work. And so the interesting thing to me is, like, when I'm vlogging or when I'm doing anything like that, I'm usually using the Sony 16 to 35 f2.8, and when I need some B-roll, I switch to 4K 60. But when I switch to 4K 60 with that APS-C crop on the 16 to 35, I actually get a 24 to 52, is that right? Yeah, 52.5 millimeter crop, which is actually my preferred range for B-roll. That's what I would normally put on for B-roll anyway, especially like a 50 mil. I really love 50 mil, so I can literally go from 16 mil vlog, zoom all the way in to 60 frames per second B-roll, and it's instantly a 52 millimeter equivalent. This has actually worked out to be kind of perfect for me, if I'm being honest. Would I want full frame 60? Of course. Has it held me back? Not at all. And if I need something tighter, I throw on the 50 mil, and now I have like a 75 millimeter equivalent. But there is another pro that comes with this as well. Now, granted, if we had full frame 4K 60, there would likely be an APS-C crop mode where you could punch in, and this would all apply anyway. I'm just trying to point out that the crop isn't that big of a deal, at least for me and for how I work. The other big pro is it changes the minimum focus distance, kinda. So this 16 to 35 G master lens, the minimum focus distance is 11 inches. When I'm zoomed into 35 on 60 frames per second with the APS-C crop, I have a 52 millimeter equivalent. The 50 mil f1.8 minimum focus distance is 15.3 inches. This will actually get much closer, much tighter to something in that 60 frames per second crop than this will at full frame. And so honestly, it's kind of a wash for me. You get active stabilization in 60 frames per second. It's still 10-bit 422, so I can still shoot in S-Log3. So before I talk about should I have bought a different camera, what's some things that I really wish that this had? What do I feel held back by? Occasionally, I feel held back by the crop in 4K 60, for sure, but overall, not really a big deal. I do wish we had 4K 120. I don't use 120 that often, but it would be nice to have. I do wish it shot faster frames per second for photos, but the image quality coming out of this is just, it's beautiful in my opinion. So after 1 year with the Sony A7 IV, should I have bought a different camera? Because my work is so equally photo and video driven, there's not really another camera that does this. Now the brand new Sony A7R5 would do it, and that's a real strong consideration for me. The Sony A7S III, while incredible for video, half of my work is photo, and I need more resolution than 12 megapixels. And none of the other higher end A1s have the flip out screen, and I do enough vlog stuff where I need this. So the Sony A7R5, really strong consideration, wasn't out when I bought this. Also, it's like $1,500 more than this. So no, at the time that I bought this, and still today, with the exception exception of the Sony A7R V, if you can afford it, if it fits your budget, this is still the best camera money can buy in that like $2,500 price point, in my opinion, that there is. Don't forget links down below for everything that I use, all my lenses, this camera, all this audio stuff that I use. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.